Hello and welcome to Views on News. I'm Jawad Tehami, and today we are going to talk about the kind of measures the authorities in Pakistan are taking to overcome the economic difficulties. The government has intensified a crackdown against smuggling out of the dollars as well as the commodities such as wheat and sugar. Now, in another major development, we have seen the government has announced a 10% processing fee on the items which are imported under the Afghan Transit Trade Agreement. The Federal Board of Revenue has also issued the draft rules to regulate Afghan imports. Now, this particular decision of the government aims to deter smuggling and ensure proper taxation. Earlier, we had seen caretaker Interior Minister Mr. Sarfraz Bugti said on Monday that those involved in smuggling would be held accountable. Also, in another major development, we have seen Pakistan's stock exchanges witnessed an upward trend today, with KCCI 100 index closing or surging above 300 points. So we've also seen the appreciation of Pakistani rupees value against the greenback for the last consecutive 20 sessions. According to the State Bank of Pakistan, Pakistani rupee closed at 284.68 against the greenback today. In today's show, we'll be taking the expert opinion regarding the government's anti-smuggling drive and the importance of taking those people involved in this particular act of smuggling to accountability. Also, the government's decision of imposing 10% processing fee on the items which would be imported under the Afghan transit trade, and also what are those factors which have contributed to the rally of Pakistan Stock Exchange and appreciation of Pakistani rupees value against the greenback. For that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Ali Salman. He is Executive Director at the Policy Research Institute of Market Economy. Mr. Ali, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. We'll be joined by another participant in the show later in the show. I'll be introducing him later there and then. Mr. Ali, now let's begin with the very basics. What sort of an impact, the negative impacts, smuggling does have on an economy in general?
Well, if I, to start with a slightly different view on that, and that view I expressed recently in an article.
I hope you won't say that it has positive impacts on the economy. Please go ahead.
Well, the article was titled "In Praise of Smuggling."
What was that?
In praise of smuggling.
In praise of smuggling, okay.
And my argument is that when the smuggling, of course, only of legal goods, we are not talking about otherwise illegal goods, such as narcotics, so leaving that aside, then smuggling is no different than trade, except that the government has no role in it. And when the smuggling of commodities is on a rise, then it gives a signal to the policymakers that there's something wrong in the regulatory, tariff, and tax regime, providing an incentive and arbitrage to traders and to consumers to use informal means of trade rather than doing formal means. It also means that the cost of trade has gone up so much that it is now unaffordable for the consumers in that country to actually use the goods which are traded through formal channel. Just to give you one small example, we have recently seen the news of sugar being smuggled out of the country, and then we heard about, the Interior Minister is on record that the military personnel were involved. There were NLC trucks being, they were caught. And so why was that happening? Because we did not let the sugar market to function properly. We imposed control on exports and on imports. And that is at a time when Pakistan had an advantage in terms of sugar prices as compared with international prices. And we should have made money by exporting the sugar last year. So we missed that opportunity, but we could not control the traders to do it informally. So government lost it, consumer lost it, and also we lost an important part of the export proceeds. Same applies to dollars, a problem which we did not have before, the problem of dollar being smuggled out or being transferred illegally only emerged in last 1.5 years because we were imposing controls and restrictions on the normal flow of dollars through banking channel. Look at remittance; they have gone down and they have gone into the hundi channel again. There is a significant decrease in the remittance flow. So why this is happening? Because there are an incentive and arbitrage opportunities we have created by excessive control. So I think while it is appreciated that government is taking administrative measures, but if there is something in terms of excessive rise in smuggling of these items, then we need to look also at the economic factors. And when we can control the economic factors, for instance, bringing the tariff rates down, bringing the import taxation down to a reasonable level, you will see, and it has happened, and I can quote examples, that the smuggling of those items then goes down. That's the basic issue that I would like to highlight. Yes, you're right that the formal sector operating in Pakistan is hurt when those goods are smuggled in without, let's say, paying the duties and tariffs. But that also means that we have to ensure level playing field. We have to ensure that the duties are rationalized so there is a fair competition available. And that's why I think it's important to look at the economic structure of the trade, which then result into smuggling.
So you mentioned the case of sugar. Ideally, the government or we, what do you mean, we should have made money, rather we couldn't control it?
Well, the mills, when we export any commodity, of course, they earn money, but the dollar comes into the national exchequer. The dollar goes to the state bank whenever we export. So if we had allowed, last year there was a difference of about $200, international market was higher and Pakistani sugar was cheaper at that point in time, and the difference was huge. So we lost that window, and we could have exported it and earned about $500 million. We could not. We ultimately allowed the sugar to be exported after a gap of 1 year, and only through strictly government means. And by that time, I think we had lost that window.
So, okay, the arguments that you've just put forward in favor of smuggling, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so when it comes to the administration or the government regulating, so where the national exchequer would be getting that input if it is not properly regulated, and if the government or the administration allows that smuggling to happen as it is?
No, we should not allow the smuggling to happen. Let's say if we notice, if the, let's say, custom authorities or the border control forces or officials note that the smuggling of X or Y item is happening, then of course they have to adopt a legal course and they have to stop it, whether by stopping the trucks, whether by closing of the border. So I'm saying that obviously that's the legal way. You cannot do otherwise. But I'm saying that you have to go beyond that legal issue.
So do you think it is justified to go for this particular act of smuggling if you already mentioned if the tariff rates are higher? So is it a justification to go through the other route rather than following that rule?
Well, look, markets and market forces, people in the business, people in the commercial sectors are looking for incentives. And we cannot offer always these legal and moral justification to the agents in the market. That's why I think what I'm saying is, while you can impose legal restriction on it and you can control it maybe for some time, but eventually if you don't change the economic incentive behind it, you're not going to solve the problem in the long run. You see, that's why I'm not say, of course I am all for legal action. It will help. But it will not help in the long run because you're not going to be able to stop it. For instance, Afghanistan-Pakistan border, which you mentioned in the beginning, has a 2,000 kilometers long porous border, and it has communities both sides, whose livelihood depends on the informal trade. Look at in Balochistan. I mean, the government officials and ministers have said on records that we should not stop smuggling. The Interior Minister was recently saying that we can't, and we should not, because if we do that.
Which Interior Minister has said that?
Current Interior Minister, the caretaker Interior Minister.
Well, he has said that action would be taken against all those who are involved.
That's right. So legal action needs to be taken. But he also said that we cannot control it 100% because it will affect the livelihood of people who are living on the border area. So there are economies and of the families, of thousands of families, which depend on that.
So what does that mean? Should that be let that happen that way, even if the livelihoods of the people are dependent on it? Why not bring those segments into the formal economy? Is there any mechanism?
I will be very happy if we can provide incentive for those segments, like for the informal, to bring a part of incentives
that you specifically talk about. What those incentives could be?
So think about the tax structure. Think about the tariff structure. Look. For instance, there was this information technology agreement, a WTO agreement, in which Pakistan was encouraged to sign some years back, but Pakistan did not sign. Now that agreement provided for elimination of custom duties on the import of IT and telecom products. Okay, so we did not sign it, and we kept on imposing the custom duties and other import taxation. What happened that people found a way of importing, like old laptops, new laptops in the form of new old laptops and telephone, because they had to pay duties. So if we eliminate those duties or reduce the duties, then they would still bring it through formal channel, and the government would earn some kind of taxation because that's become part of a formal economy. Now, because we have raised the cost so much through these measures, people are then forced to actually do it in formal ways. So that's the cost which we need to bring down to bring the people working in the informal sector to the formal sector. And there was one also interesting aspect, and then how, for instance, if you look at our markets in large urban centers, you will notice that thousands of items are actually now there which are untaxed, which are coming through these means. It's no more just located in the old Bada market of Peshawar. It is, you will find Bada market everywhere, right? So, and
that is exactly the point. That's why we need to curb smuggling. If these type of items are present even in the other markets, except for the Bada markets that you've just mentioned, I mean, don't you think that has an impact on the local manufacturing also? It also creates a demand and supply imbalance.
Oh, absolutely, it does. It does create a negative incentive for local manufacturing when you have these goods coming in through, without paying the duties and taxes. That's why I'm saying that the point I was raising, that it also because of the rising inflation. So people can't afford all those items if they are not cost-wise competitive. So we need to look at the economic incentives of rising rate of smuggling, and look into that as, we need to align those incentives between the formal and the informal sector. Only then we can actually have a solution.
Right. We're joined by another participant in the show. Mr. Tariq Yousuf is former president of the Karachi Chamber of Commerce and Industry on the phone line. Mr. Tariq, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Now, how do you look at this particular anti-smuggling drive that has been intensified by the authorities in Pakistan?
First of all, I welcome this move, and I think it has been a long-awaited and neglected area on the governance matter. I think this should have been done maybe 20 years ago, and never. So it is never late if it really continues, and this is the only solution to protect the local industry. If we do not cut down the smuggling, we cannot grow. We buy in dollars, we sell in rupees. That's not workable. That is simply not workable for any country. We have to cut down the illegal imports of all items in this country. Only then we can promote the production of all these items which we are importing. I think it is a very, very good step. and long awaited. I hope we can continue with this. That's the main thing. If we can have a continuous and a persistent policy, there have been some imposition of duties also, which I think is a positive thing, but it needs to be on a higher level. 10% is not sufficient. We have an 18% tax, sales tax, and a 10% on the transit fee. I think that just does not justify with the local industry.
Right, you mentioned that to curb smuggling, to protect the local industry. Okay, so what other areas do you think smuggling negatively impact in the economic domain?
Well, if you look at the economic domain, there are many things. First of all, we have to see the cost of doing things. Unfortunately, in recent, only in the last year, we have gone to a price level of electricity which is beyond the limits of competitiveness for a manufacturer. It has gone from 22 rupees to around 60 rupees. This is a very big difference, 3 times the energy cost. How can you compete? That's one area we have to really look into. And when we talk of Karachi in particular, Karachi has a serious issue of gas shortage. And the holiday, 2 days holidays every week for gas supply, which comes to about 28% of the total productive activity. So that needs to be resolved. In Karachi, it is very difficult to adopt alternate energy source because of the land price. And now the factories are already, there are so many factories in Karachi. They are all installed in about 5,000, 10,000 yards. So if your manufacturing activities need that type of space, and then on the top of it you are asked to have alternate arrangement for energy also, that perhaps is not workable. So we have to see that how we can continue supplying energy to Karachi as regard to gas and a lower price of gas. In addition to that, there one area also which has not been extended is the number of agencies for the inspections of the industrial units in Pakistan. We have to make life very easy for an industrial. A very friendly environment is desired. There are many areas. We cannot sum up all this in on this show, but I think we need a long debate on how to incentivize the industrialization in our country, how to make things easy, how to make it very friendly for an entrepreneur.
Right. Could you, Mr. Yousuf, could you shed a little bit of light on how smuggling basically creates a demand and supply imbalance?
It is the cost of the landed goods. That's it. I mean, if you smuggle a good, the taxation level is much lower. The rate of smuggling is lower than the tax liability. So as long as we are continuing the smuggling process, the local industry will not be able to compete with it. And I tell you one thing, Pakistan makes nothing, as honestly speaking, as far as the requirement of this country is. We are a market of 240 million people. Making is difficult, selling is not an issue. So we have to understand this, and we have to encourage making in this country because selling is a need.
So what steps are required for that?
As I mentioned earlier, first of all, we need to have a very friendly investment climate. And then secondly, we should have a long-term investment, consistent economic policy. A person who invests, he should know that this is the type of incentives we have, this is the structure we have, and it will not change for another 10 years. That's the only way to do it. If you do not have a long-term industrialization policy, I tell you, industry is a requirement of any country. If you go to China, we really feel that every size of industrial units are there, be it a small or big one. It is just like that. A factory at Badami Road and a factory like Pico, old long time ago, both of them are working over there, and they are able to make products for the local industry, for the development of the industrial activities, everything into that country. One area where we lack is also the transformation of the industrial activities, engineering based. We have no engineering base to be transformed into the local manufacturing. We have no strong base in the metallurgical department. We have to work on this area where we can make the machinery also a base for that in our country. If you could make a car back in 1964, why we can't do it now on the same lines as we have done 40 years ago, rather 60 years ago? This country is capable of doing everything.
Right, Mr. Tariq Yousuf, there is another aspect when it comes to this phenomenon of smuggling, the accountability of those who are involved in it. We've seen the caretaker interior minister saying that those who will be found involved in this particular act would be held responsible and would be held accountable. He has also shared the information that the army chief has also told his men that those who are involved in it would face court martials and would go to jails. When we talk about smuggling in particular, there seems to be a nexus of those people who are involved from the security side also, of course, against which the action is promised by the army chief himself. What about the traders who are involved in it? Is the trader community ready to expose those elements within its own community?
You see, accountability is a necessity. If we let things go the way they are going and nobody is accountable, then we are talking for nothing. We have to be result oriented and we have to hold those people responsible, whoever he may be, for this act which has been damaging the economy of this country. Without accountability, without registration, without recognizing the people who are involved in this, without holding them responsible for this act, then there are no results. We have to understand this, that we can't let it go as it is, and I hope we can continue with this accountability system for all times to come in our country.
So do you think the traders community, the business community would be able to go to that length of exposing the elements within it?
You see, the traders have competition within themselves. They are also not happy with this situation. The person who wants to do it through proper channels is complaining of a person who is competing with him with an illegal channel, and then the business does not flourish.
Right. Please stay with us, Mr. Tariq Yousuf. We are joined by another participant, Dr. Vaqar Ahmed. He is Joint Executive Director at the Sustainable Development Policy Institute, joining us on the phone line. Dr. Vaqar, thank you very much for joining in at Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. What's your understanding regarding this anti-smuggling drive by the authorities in Pakistan?
It's been a long time coming. I think this is a step which, of course, we should have taken much earlier, given that it has been affecting the genuine business community. It has been affecting these gray markets and black markets, have been affecting the government revenues as well. It has hurt our trade relations with our neighbors. And plus, of course, we have a responsibility towards the global community to check illegal and informal trade and financial inflows. So I think if you look at this from a global and regional lens, this sort of strengthens the credibility of Pakistan in front of the global financial oversight institutions.
Right. Dr. Vaqar, how crucial is accountability of those people or elements, either from the security side or from within the business or traders community in this particular regard?
Yes, I think this is a very important question. The sustainability of this drive is extremely important, because whenever we have had past stints of such crackdowns, we have seen the mischievous elements would sort of duck down and temporarily sort of leave the space, only to come back very quickly and reopen these black markets. I think the sustainability would be crucial. Those elements are charged this time. They should be made an example of, so that there's no recurrence of such activities, may it be the forex market, may it be the commodities such as sugar, may it be oil, or any other market for that matter.
Right, Dr. Vaqar, now when we talk about the Afghanistan-Pakistan transit trade agreement, a 10% processing fee has been imposed by the government on the items to be imported by Afghanistan. How do you look at this particular measure?
Yes, I think while the duty has been imported, but we will really need a very strong customs administration at the border now, because we have seen that whenever we have increased duties, tariffs, para-tariffs, these tend to give rise to smuggling. So one has to be very careful that not only the duty has been increased, but administrative measures should also be kept very strengthened going into the future as well. Plus, there has to be a criteria of how the duty has been imposed, and maybe in future, if this duty has to be increased or decreased, that criteria should be very transparent. One example of what I'm saying is that, for example, a duty such as this one should have been around much earlier, given that in many of the markets, as food or fertilizer, these commodities were going to Central Asia via Afghanistan. For subsidizing the consumers in Central Asia. So now, of course, if such a duty is in place, the criteria to set such duty or to change it in future should be very transparent.
Right, Dr. Vaqar, now the Afghan importers would be required to submit bank guarantees also, according to the draft rules which have been issued by the Federal Board of Revenue. How do you look at that?
Yes, I think eventually Afghan traders had to come into business as usual kind of affairs, and while I'm sure there would be some resentment that this should not have happened, but we have given quite a bit of grace time. I will in fact go a step further, that the automation reforms that we have taken in the form of Pakistan single window, which greatly facilitate trade across borders, I think similar automation reforms should now be put in place in Afghanistan as well. This is in the interest of both countries, and additionally, this will prevent under-invoicing and the problem of flying invoices as well.
Right, Dr. Vaqar, now there's been development regarding the Pakistan Stock Exchange also, the KCCI 100 index surging over 300 points. We've also seen the appreciation of Pakistani rupees value against the greenback. What factors do you think have contributed, especially when it comes to the appreciation of PKR's value against the greenback from the last consecutive 20 sessions?
Yes, I believe that 3 or 4 factors. One is that finally, overall macroeconomic management is sort of or sort of key decisions are converted now. You can see at a federal level, the policies are being well coordinated. This is apart from the crackdown. So the federal government is cognizant that they have a much higher revenue target which they have to achieve, very cognizant of the belt tightening that they have to do on the expenditure side. And the business community views this fiscal discipline very encouraging sort of thing. Second, you're also looking at increased interest of investors, diplomats, FIFC. The market, big announcements are around the corner, especially from the Gulf countries. All this positive sentiment, and of course, the fact that the government is engaging almost daily with the IMF for reviewing them. All this is adding to the positive sentiment, which was much Pakistan economy.
Right, Dr. Vaqar, I'm a Joint Executive Director at Sustainable Development Policy Institute, joining us on the phone line. Thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Ali, now talking about the accountability when it comes to holding those accountable who are involved in smuggling, how crucial that one do you think?
Well, I think I have made my views loud and clear that
so
this will
those
help
who are involved are not to be held accountable?
Of course,
so
they should be held accountable.
Okay.
I'm all for a legal action,
Right.
but it will not solve the problem in the long run. As Dr. Vaqar was also just saying, that yes, we have imposed the duties on the transit trade, but on the other hand, if we are not efficient in the administrative customs, then the incidence of smuggling will increase. And that was exactly the point I was drawing before, that there is a strong economic rationale that we need to look into, and only administrative and governance measures would not solve it. But I want to come back to an important point with our friend from Karachi, a business community, was raising. I think this is very important because there is, of course, a link between the smuggling and the incentives or the future for local industries. So many valid points were raised, especially on the competitiveness. And here I want to give a positive example of how Pakistan, for instance, in the last 20 years expanded its motorbike industry. So 20 years ago, we only had 1 or 2 brands, Honda CD70 being the market leader. But then around 2002, then Engineering Development Board, led by Mr. Imtiaz Rastgar, who himself is a great industrialist, he introduced reforms, and he brought and he opened up the licensing of the motorbike industry. So once you open up the economy and once you break up these monopolies, then you encourage more investment of like Chinese and other players coming into Pakistan, looking at the domestic market, and eventually going to the export market. So you need free trade, you need incentives for investment to actually boost the industrial activity. I think it was very right, that importance of manufacturing, importance of industrialization. But then we can't just pick smuggling as sort of the cause of deindustrialization in Pakistan. There are issues of trade and investment regime which we need to talk about. And in that respect, I think talking about formal and informal sector again, I like to talk about one important disincentive, and that is the very high rate of general sales tax we have. We have one of the highest general sales tax in the region. We have one of the highest income tax rates in the region, and that is a deterrence for those who want to be in the formal sector. The small and medium enterprises cannot pay 18%, 20% general sales tax, stay in the business and sell it, because there are no consumers who are going to have that much of capacity to pay. So they eventually stay outside, so that the cost can be reduced. Now it creates a problem for the large companies, for the formal sector, who cannot avoid. So the solution is not just compliance. That's the main problem with the current government approach. They are just looking at compliance. The solution is to bring the rates down. They may not have.
What happens to generally the trend in the developing world regarding the GST?
Well, they always start from a very low rate, 2%, 3%, 4%, and they only gradually go up. This has happened in Turkey, this has happened in Indonesia, happened in Malaysia, happened in India. Everywhere you go, no country in the world has started from a higher rate and then trying to come down, because then they are stuck at a very narrow base. We have done it, and unfortunately no one is talking about that. No one is ready to talk about bringing the rates down, including IMF. So we are stuck in that system where we have, out of let's say 4 to 5 million enterprises in the country, not even 500,000 companies are registered in the sales tax. In Malaysia, which is a much smaller economy in terms of the population, you have about 600,000 enterprises in the VAT regime, although they eventually abolished it and brought to 0%. But at least they are documented.
So you mean to say if we
have to bring the
rate down?
We have to bring
so
the rates
naturally
down.
It would make all the companies to get themselves
It will make easy, yeah.
And
let's say 5%.
There would be a broadening of
there will be a broadening, so
tax regime,
because people are paying illegal, like the people are paying bribes. There are cost of remaining outside the system, and we have worked out that cost is 5%. The day you will introduce 5% with a reasonable level of administration, I can assure you that many more enterprises would be happily join the system. But right now, I think they cannot afford to join the system of let's say the GST regime, and that will mean that the burden would unfortunately remain on the large-scale industries, which is currently the case.
So how would the government or the authorities will address the issue of generation of revenue?
So
by
eventually,
reducing the rate?
so yes, I mean that's you
But
say you
if
can't
the
do it on
government
overnight.
authorities reduce the rate,
Right.
by the matter of assumption, we say that more and
Sure.
more people will come into the tax base, right? So if that doesn't happen,
So there is a way of doing
wherever
it.
the revenue was already
I know
being
that
generated from,
that's the normal objection rate whenever we talk about that. You see, I'm not saying that we do it overnight and we do it, let's say, 100 sectors on one day. You pick one sector. You take jewelry. You take any one sector and say, okay, we are going to do it in one sector or 5 sectors in 1 year and see the results. Learn from the examples and then expand it. That's how you do it. And that's how the world has done it. Which we are not ready to do at all. So that's the
so
problem.
what should that criteria be in order to identify those sectors where to start this particular thing from?
Well, there could be low-hanging fruits. You can say that those sectors, for instance, which are existing in geographical clusters, those sectors which are sort of more integrated in terms of value chain, which are more amenable to a VAT regime at a much lower rate. We can start from those sectors, and industries, association, traders, trade bodies can be consulted to actually to make it happen. You know, I'm sure there are incentives. Once they see the incentives of documentation, then they will have more, you know, they will set an example and they will join the system. But right now, we are not ready to do that experiment because all of us, and I mean the policymakers, are very short-term in nature, and they don't have sort of this long-term view that how to address it. So that's where we are stuck at the moment.
Let me take Mr. Tariq Yousuf's view on the observations you've just made. Mr. Tariq Yousuf, what do you think of specifically when we talk about the general sales tax regime, the rate of which has been suggested by Mr. Ali Salman to be reduced?
Ali Salman Saab has identified some very vital points. The GST is one of the issue. I just want to tell you one thing, that for the unregistered person, the rate of sales tax on power supply is double. It's just simply the double. If I am paying as a registered person 18%, the person who is unregistered is still willing to pay 36% and does not want to come into the net. We have to understand this situation. And totally agreeing with Ali Saab, that I think that if we do not come with a low rate and a friendly culture of being registered in the national economy, we cannot broaden our base. We cannot broaden our any official business system. We have GST, we have income tax, higher level. And then on the top of it, we have 25% of the investment cost, the financial charges by the bank. This has to be understood. That can anyone install the unit by paying 25% finance cost and then make money on it? I think to me, it is impossible. I think it is just not possible. We have to have some understanding for development of industrial base in this country, and finance cost is certainly one of them. Secondly, we have to give tax benefits. We have to give tax incentives for industrialization. The rate of taxation should be designed for promotion of industry. If we do not do that, if we do not make people attract for this system, then it is very difficult to say that the industrial process and the major industrial activity in this country will grow up. We have also tax liabilities at a very high level in our social duties, like EOBI, Social Security, group insurance, and so on and so forth. All are being mismanaged, very honestly speaking. If we cut down the level, if we bring down to a realistic level, and then secondly, the facilities from all these social services are provided to the satisfaction of the company who is bearing this expense is also a prime requirement. If the facilities are not as per the desire of the employer for his employee, then that discomfort level comes. It's an overall situation we have to understand. We have to sit down. We have to sit down, work out the modalities that person working in this country wants to get registered and wants to be in the system and does not get diverted towards high rate of taxes by not getting registered. We have to make it a very friendly. And now you see, the old days have gone. It is a digitalized age. There are some videos in social media where they say what hawker has a taxing system. If we can go to that level in this activity, then why not at a registered shop? This is the point we have to encash, that now it is easy. No contact business should be there between taxpayer and tax collector. It should be automatic system, generated and done. No letters coming after the end of the year or maybe during the year. It should be easy life, easy to work, easy to earn, easy to work for the country.
Right, Mr. Tariq Yousuf, pretty quickly, the last thing, the appreciation of rupee's value against the greenback. There has been continuous appreciation of PKR against the greenback. What major factor do you think the anti-hoarding and smuggling drive, smuggling out of dollars drive actually increased the investors?
I think, as I look at it, today there is no economic activity. Hello, can you hear me?
Please go ahead, Mr. Yousuf.
Yeah. Today there is no economic activity which can be said that for this reason the dollar has depreciated and Pak rupee has appreciated. The only activity has been the plugging of the illegal smuggling of dollars from this country. This is the only what we call an administrative measure that has been taken and has resulted so positively. If you go into the economic policies also, I can assure you Pak rupee will definitely improve much more than what we think. Today it is only a mere arrangement of plugging the leakage. That has helped this position. That has come to this position. Otherwise, there are no drastic actions for the purpose of exports or activities, enhancement of exports.
Investment Facilitation Council, Mr. Yousuf, establishing the Special Investment Facilitation Council to attract the foreign investment.
That's absolutely a new area which the Chief of Army Staff has identified, and I'm sure now the world is working on modern lines. There are modern irrigation systems. The mining business is there. Can you hear me?
Please go ahead, Mr. Yousuf. Yes.
Yeah. Mining industry is there. Agro-based industry is there. These are the areas which have never been tapped. And if we are able to make a breakthrough through this, I'm sure not only this, that we will be able to utilize our land, we shall also be able to attract foreign investment at a very high level.
Right. Mr. Tariq Yousuf, former president of Karachi Chamber of Commerce and Industry, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Ali Salman, now your last comments regarding the appreciation of rupee's value. Do you agree with what Mr. Yousuf had to say? And what about the prospects associated with SIFC?
I think I broadly agree that this has provided Pakistani rupee a temporary relief, and we should again build on this window of relative stability and correct the economic incentives, and so that we can actually provide the basis for long-term stability. Now, a comment on the SIFC is, I think, would be in order, because that is relatively a new institution which many people are optimistic about. I also want to be optimistic about it. But my question is that, for instance, we had, of course, mining sector, we had agro-based industry, and those sectors have attracted investment in the past. If you remember, the dairy industry about 10 or 15 years ago, especially in Punjab, attracted significant foreign investment, and a significant market share was shifted from the informal sector to the formal sector, because the incentives were aligned. Pakistan is one of the leading producer of dairy products, but we were not in the value addition. Now we have improving. Similarly, in the mining, we had Reko Dik as an example. but we made a mess out of it. The legal system, the judicial system, the investment,
the bureaucratic hurdles.
the
That's
bureaucratic
why
hurdles,
this SIFC is actually aimed
absolutely.
at providing
So I'm
a
saying
single
that
window operation.
if SIFC can, lead to changes in the underlying investment regime, then it will be definitely a positive step. But if SIFC is just restricted or is giving orders, as the newspapers report seem to suggest, and maybe I'm wrong, because I do not understand the internal working of how they are operating, then I'm afraid then this is going to be just like maybe temporary measure. So you have to look at like why investment is not coming in Pakistan, and before you look at foreign investors, you look at domestic investment. So we need to ask people like Tariq Yousuf that why they are not investing in Pakistan, and only then you can talk about foreign investors. So there are reasons which have been mentioned. I think that's where we need to look at, and it's not just the administrative measure. There's also correction in the entire policy regime, in particular the taxation and tariff regime, which is needed.
Mr. Ali Salman, Executive Director, Policy Research, Institute of Market Economy, thank you very much for once again taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.